What's happening, everyone? Right now we are in Huntington Beach. We are at the Paseo Hotel. I'm getting ready to do a podcast with my good buddy Tyler Harris. We're gonna go over all different kinds of things, strategies in social media and the digital space. We're gonna go over real estate investing, why it makes sense, how you can take you, your company, your family to the next level. Stay tuned. We're getting ready to knock out a really cool podcast with my man here, Tyler Harris. If you're not following him right now, what's your handle?
Tyler Harris page. We are actually live right now at the Paseo, Hotel and Resort?
Hotel and Resort, Huntington Beach.
Hotel and Resort in Huntington Beach. We've been filming a bunch of content here this morning with a big crew. We've got a special guest here recording a podcast live on air. We've got Mr. Dane Carter. I'm going to allow you, man. I don't want to even mess up your intro. Just tell everybody who you are, where you're from, kind of what your focus is on right now, and then we'll kind of go back and forth and go from there, man.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Dane Carter, and I'm from Long Beach, California, born and raised. And I'm into real estate. I'm into real estate investing. I'm into media. I'm into all the different spaces for digital growth. But my biggest thing right now is to really help people truly understand all of their options in real estate and real estate investing. And it's just a big part of my message.
Yep.
And this book that I just wrote, it's called 100 Doors. It's only 100 pages. It takes 100 minutes to read. It gives you the blueprint on how to really kind of invest in real estate on the short term.
And so what's the 100 doors?
Right, so that's the concept that I came up with, was once you have 100 doors that are all gonna net you $1,000 a door in cash flow, you're making $100,000 a month in passive income for doing nothing, and your tenants are 100% covering the cost, mortgage, taxes, and expenses.
It sounds terrible.
It's awful, but you can live on that.
Yeah, you can.
You can live on $100K a month.
It's a good start.
It is.
Hey, so man, one question I love to ask people is, every successful person has a painful story. If you haven't heard it yet, it's just because it hadn't come out yet. But the part we'd like to add on to that is, will your painful story have a successful ending? So what's one of those stories that you have, one of those things that now looking back, you know happened for you, not to you, and has made you the business person or just the man that you are today? Yeah,
no, and it was actually put so beautifully by you. It didn't happen to me.
Exactly.
It happened for me. And it's the thing I say a lot, if you can survive the event, if you can live through the event, then you can live with the memory. So if it happens to you and you can live with that, it didn't kill you, then you can live with the memory. So for me, I was raised poor. Was raised poor, raised by a single mom. It was me and my brother and her. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment. We lived out of a cooler. And we struggled. We struggled. So I saw from a very young age that if I wanted something, I had to really go out and make it happen for myself. And that's one of the pain points for me, because I had to change that mindset. I had to unlock a new mindset as a kid to get something, or I'd have been stuck.
So let's kind of take it back a little, and what's been the progression? What have been kind of the key steps along the way that have led to where you're at now? How long have you been doing real estate?
I've been doing real estate for just about 10 years, and I had a totally different world before that, and a totally different world before that. So I've kind of gone in different phases, most entrepreneurs, and I go full gas. So I started working when I was 12, because I really wanted to buy a wetsuit. All my friends were rich. I wanted to surf in the summer, and I didn't have any money. So I started working. I was cleaning silk screens at the silk screen shop, only place in town to give me a job because I was too young. And I would slowly give this guy $20 every time I got paid for my wetsuit.
That's awesome.
And I got it, and I was so accomplished. I was in tears. That was it for me. So that set the fire. And then I was deep into restaurants for a long time, and I used to buy restaurants and stuff like that, which was great. But a big shifting part for me was when I was in the wine business. I became one of the youngest wine sommeliers in the country.
Really?
And I was 21, got super fired up on wine, but then got burnt out. Was drinking like crazy, put on like 50 pounds. I was working for corporate and not myself. I was just burning the candle at both ends. And so I hit pause. I didn't work for a year and a half. We got super into yoga. And just got really healthy.
That's awesome. And so coming out of that, you said year and a half?
Year and a half of literally doing nothing and spending my whole savings.
And so was that a big self-development? You said you were doing yoga, but was it a lot on the mental side of like building yourself back up, or just was it changing who you were, like transforming into someone new, or was it just like figuring out who you were?
It was exposing who I was.
Yeah.
It was literally cracking all the bullshit, all the ego, all the stories that I've been telling myself or that were told to me growing up, like, you're severely dyslexic, you're never gonna do this. You're not that smart, you got terrible grades, D's and F's. Like, that was constant in my life growing up. And plus I love just slapping people with "you're wrong." I'm gonna prove you wrong, watch this.
So, man, it's so similar to my story. I had probably a 2-year period where I still had jobs,
right,
but I wasn't working.
Yes.
I was playing the victim, playing the blame game, all these things that had happened to me at that time, the way I looked at it, and was completely content with just like having people feel sorry for me for these things that had happened, and just not being able to go all in because I was fearful that if I went all in again, it would be taken away. And so it was just like this scapegoat. It was like, it was so easy for me to explain, oh, well, the reason I got terminated from that job, or the reason I quit that job,
somebody else's fault.
Like, I wasn't trying. I was like, oh, I wasn't trying. I mean, if I would have tried, I would have killed it. But like, I wasn't trying. So of course it didn't work out. And I used that for like 2.5 years before finally having this realization, whether you call it personal responsibility or taking ownership, but just realizing that like everything that was happening, it was all my fault. Like none of that stuff, like I had to take ownership of all of it, because when you point the finger at someone else, you give them the power.
100%.
I'm taking that power back by just owning every situation. Let's get a little bit more tactical here on just some of the key things that have helped you succeed. What I want to know is, what are some of the things that you quit doing that enabled you to succeed, or put you in a position to succeed?
It's a very, very good question. And so for me, it was a few things that I stopped doing, but it was more so things that I made non-negotiables for me. So what I did is I took away the victim mentality. I took away the blame game, as I'm sure you know well as I did. It wasn't my fault, it was theirs. Once I started taking vicious, wild accountability for everything I did and everything was my fault, I could move much faster. I could stay on the offense much longer. So when I started to do meditations every morning for 10 minutes, non-negotiable, no matter what, right after that, 5 minutes of sitting in gratitude. So I sit in gratitude, what I'm grateful for. What that does is it just gives me space for the day. I mean, I've got 5 companies, they're all on fire half the time. So if I'm not prepared, I'm in big trouble. So I didn't really stop doing as much except for blaming everybody, but I started to add more things like family. I make breakfast for my family every morning. I make breakfast for the nanny. And then I go to work. I work from 10 to 3. I'm home at 3 o'clock every day for my kids.
That's awesome.
Like, so I stopped giving the excuse of it's all about the commas and the zeros. It's not just about the money in the bank.
We did this VIP deal where we got an hour after the event just to sit down in the conference room. We ended up sitting there for 2.5 hours till like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Such a good dude, right?
And it was just that. It was like I was still looking for permission just based on all the noise that was out there. The funniest thing, I met with him again at Asian 2021 in Miami, and I was telling him about how I had made this decision for 5 years not to monetize any of it. And as I said that, he was like, but don't you realize it's like 5 years will become your life? Like, because that's how you win. And in the back of my mind, I was still, even though I was like monetizing, I was still like, what do I need to be doing to prepare for that year 6 that pops up, and to then be able to get 10x what I would have gotten throughout the 5 years of not selling. And it was so like incredible for me to hear from him that like, no, it's just organically, like it's not
just going to happen.
Think about it. It's just, and in the 15 months that I've been doing this, it's just, I mean, you can call it the law of attraction, but it's just these connections that are made. The reason why we're sitting down right now,
100%.
It's just these small little things over time by putting good stuff out there. Like I'm just becoming so aware of the fact that the universe will not be indebted to you. And if the intent's right, because obviously we know that the return long term will be monetarily beneficial. But it's still the intent of doing it regardless of that.
And you can tell. Like you can tell when somebody has an agenda. You can tell right away. Like I'm sure your entire audience is very savvy. You can tell. You just can.
It's like me literally having like a button on year 5 that I'm going to press that like everything's just working. I can't wait. Like it's going to be so expensive, and it's just like it's literally. I mean, it's Gary Vee. I mean, it's all it is.
I just believe in that guy. Like he He's got a great message. And I love he's always talking about legacy. And the big thing for me that I shifted right about 2 years ago is everything I do now is for legacy. And one of the big things that I love is I have 2 small children. And if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, they have a year of solid content of being filmed. And I got podcasts. I mean, I've done stuff. So they can see me like closing big real estate deals. They can see me loving them as their father, see me as an amazing husband, see me as working out. My health is so important to me. But before, that's lost in time forever. And now my great grandkids get to log into whatever they do and see that. I would give anything to see a podcast from my great grandfather for 5 minutes.
I mean, and it's even they'll be able to put contact lenses in.
And that's the best part,
and
right?
Be able to like sit right there. And like experience this conversation. I mean, there's no telling.
That's
I
the
think
best.
about the same thing. Like I've gotten emotional on I do a lot of live content. And I've gotten like emotional like midnight. I'm on Facebook Live and I've been on the road for 11 straight days. I'm thinking of like a 13-month-old at the time. She's now 19 months and like sitting there talking about the cost of the hustle and like
and you're in tears.
The reasons that you're doing these things, like this time, there's this concept of like spending time away from your family versus investing time for your family. Like this dynamic of for my daughter to one day be able to look back and be like, holy crap, like look at my dad was putting himself through like all this chaos, all these hours, all this stuff for her.
And it's that gift that you get to share with her later as the adult version of her. You know what I mean? Like, what a cool dinner for you guys get to have in like 20 years.
Cool.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to be that creepy old man that just sits in the den and just watches videos.
100%. 100%.
Just lives
be like, see, I told you guys I was right.
Remember when I rapped on this one video? Remember when I was a rapper for like 10 minutes?
Hey,
it's the best.
Everybody's got to live a little bit.
So tell me, right now, what's your main focus? What's the thing you're most excited about putting out right now?
Sure. So I'm putting out as much as I can to as many people that'll listen about this live for free concept and mentality. And it goes around real estate investing. And I'm really targeting 17 to 32 year olds basically, for people that are in that zone, or you might buy your first home. You might start a family. Don't buy a house first. Buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex. Use the FHA financing, 3.5%. Live in one of the units, rent out the other to, if not cover 100% of the mortgage, close to it. Because if you are paying rent, you might as well pay it to yourself. And then that property that you pay whatever $200,000 for or $700,000 for in 20 years is worth millions. So if you do that once, you'll be set up forever. So the book that I have basically just lays that whole thing out for you.
Do you find it's so difficult sometimes to get a young person to grasp that? Like, I knew that. Like what you just said, like I knew that when I was buying my first home.
I passed on it at 26.
I didn't do it.
I agree.
And I knew that it was the smart thing to do. But like when you have that momentum of like things are going pretty well, and it's just like this normal thing of like, oh, it's time to buy a house. To be able to go humble and maybe not buy the big house that you can possibly afford, but buy the, like you're saying, duplex, triplex, and be able to set yourself up
forever.
That like literally, that's stuff that you can never ever recreate. Like you talk about investments that you make as in your 20s and 30s, so you can never catch up in your 40s and 50s. It's that exact same thing. But to be able to get people to grasp that, that's such a cool thing for you to be able to, that in itself is legacy, because it'd be like this one guy that I listened to his podcast, I listened to his content, and it finally drilled into my brain enough to where I said yes instead of no when everybody else would say no.
And that's really what I'm trying to do. I've never had any conversations with any people that have owned real estate that said, I'm so pissed that I bought that property 20 years ago. It's the opposite. It's like, oh, if I hadn't have sold that property, it'd be worth X. So I don't want those same regrets. If I could go back and tell my 26-year-old self, I'm 41, 26-year-old, one thing, buy that duplex in Seal Beach that you were going to buy for $240, because now it's worth $1.7, dodo.
And you know, the important thing I think for people to understand too is like a lot of people feel like, especially in real estate, I think, a lot of people feel like there's so many people out there that are so much more experienced that there's no deals out there. Like there's no deals, there's no opportunities.
So not true.
It's that scarcity mindset that like, who am I to even start looking for opportunities? Because that means if I find it, it went through 1,000 views first. But those opportunities, they happen all, like some of the deals that I hear people getting, I'm like, how did you find that? I'm like, oh, you were proactive? You actually like went out and were looking.
Dude, the best deals I've ever got, ever in my entire career in real estate have because of some relationship I created. Most of them never hit the market because like, Aunt so-and-so's cousin passed away, and he's an investor, he's a good guy, what do you think? Like, but if you're not in that conversation and you're not educated, you don't know it's even possible.
Yeah, that's true. So man, where can people find you online?
Sure, so I'm online everywhere. It's just my name, Andy Dane Carter. So you can find me there on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I have a YouTube show called UNLOCKNOW with Andy Dane Carter. That was just picked up by Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire Stick, which is going to come out at the end of April. We just announced that last week. And the book, if you would like the book for free, it's on my website right now. You can get a digital version for free at andydanecarter.com. If you want to hear more about the podcast, I have a podcast, Bulletproof Real Estate with Andy Dane Carter, where again, tons and tons and tons of free content. And I don't charge for any of it. Just
Man, I would highly, highly encourage people to actually go to these resources, because I heard you talking earlier, and I so respect everyone that's willing to give out their quote-unquote secrets.
All of them.
As though there are secrets. But like this abundance mentality that you have and that I have and that is so important, like people need to flock to those. Like not to the ones that like, hey, I'll give you all my secrets if you join this mastery for 30.
if you give me 5 Gs, you get the keys to the castle.
And if you think if that person has that mindset, I promise you're not actually getting anything.
They have a fiduciary responsibility to themselves, not to you.
Exactly.
And there's a bunch out there. So I think what you're doing is amazing because you can clearly tell you're over-delivering value on the daily. You're investing tons of money into your value for your audience. And there's no ask.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like you're just putting it out there, and I just have a ton of respect for that.
Appreciate that, man. Well, with that, guys, this is the Breadwinner Podcast. Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and leave a review of this episode. And until next time, we will see you then.